Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's Game of Thrones Season 7, Episode 5 discussion, a live discussion. I'm joined here by Akton Tamko and Max from Buzztox. Akton, thanks for joining us. And actually, you weren't able to make it next week, so glad that you're back here.
Last week, yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to make it last week. Yeah, it's good to be back. Sorry I missed it last week. So last week I was traveling. I had to go down to Flea Bottom to go find this guy that I met briefly 4 years ago. And he, even though he has absolutely no purpose for me right now, I had to go get him because the fans demand it. He's popular. The fans wanted to see him. So I went and got him, even though there's no reason for it. And now I'm back with Gendry and ready to talk about easily my least favorite episode of the season.
Cool. And Max, thanks for coming back for another week to do this live discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy being on for the second week in a row. Yeah, I feel like this episode, I liked this episode initially, and then on a second viewing, it started kind of hitting away at me, and I'm just a little nervous going forward, just a little nervous, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so let's start with that because let's start overall thoughts of the episode. I think we're pretty much all in agreement that this episode was kind of a disappointment. I gave the ratings between 1 to 10. I gave it a 7, and I got some comments of people saying 7, Mark, that's generous. But I don't think it was a horrible episode. There was just a few issues I had with it here and there, but I definitely think it's my least favorite of the season because all the other episodes I've given an 8 or higher, and this one is definitely the lowest for me. And I'm disappointed because I was actually expecting a lot. I knew it would be a transition from one battle to the next, and I was looking forward to. a lot of exposition things being explained, but not as much explaining and not as much character building as I was hoping for. So I don't know. What were your thoughts on that, Max?
I think this episode. This is the first episode I realized that suffered from trying to cram too much into an episode. I feel like there were a couple things going on at once. I feel like certain character motives changed for the purpose of plot, and I felt like my suspension of disbelief as a viewer, so far, I've been able to be like, oh yeah, cool, I was able to suspend disbelief enough to enjoy it. But I feel like this episode pushed me far enough to the point where I can't suspend my disbelief that far anymore, and it really took me out of the episode, and I didn't enjoy it. So yeah, it totally took me out, suspension of disbelief, and certain characters did things I didn't like, and there were certain moments that they had that could have been great that they just rushed and brushed over. So I feel like this episode could have been done better, and I feel like we needed more episodes if they were gonna, tell this story.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I agreed with that. I said that in my review that I felt like we could have used at least one more episode in this season, possibly 2, to really tell the story. Let's have some dialogue with Jorah and Jon Snow. Let's have some scenes with them that leads up to it before Jorah just suddenly out of nowhere for no reason decides to go up north after only having 3 lines in the whole episode. It was just weird, and just a lot of things like that. I also feel like the Littlefinger plot could be hashed out a little bit more. I feel like that's going to be pretty rushed through because you only got 2 episodes to resolve that, and I just think that we definitely should have had another episode. Excuse me. Shoot, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, I know what I was going to say. So we did kind of know. I think Max also knew. I know Mark knew about a lot of these events that happened in this episode from the plot leak, and these events Tyrion and Davos apparently going to King's Landing and for some weird reason bringing Gendry back. Them making the decision to go up and get the White. There were a few other things that we knew about from the plot leak, and those were all things that when I saw in the plot leak, I was like, I wonder how that's going to look on screen. Because those are all things that I thought, that seems weird, but I will wait to see how it plays out on screen, because I'm sure they'll come up with some, logical reason that that Gendry would be brought in. I'm sure that there'll be some logical reason for Jorah to go up north. I think I predicted that there would be some kind of dialogue between him and Jon, and that there would be a reason for it. So I was after reading the plot leak, I was really suspicious, but I was like, oh, we'll see how it plays out on screen. And then when it played out on screen, it's awful. I mean, and I'm not saying that the episode overall was awful, because as I said in my review, there was a lot of great things that I did enjoy. I did enjoy the Dany stuff. I did enjoy. I actually do enjoy kind of the struggle that she's having with being, kind of moving toward the Mad Queen kind of thing, and yet having to win the war, because those are kind of things that she's, not being the Mad Queen was failing her. Like doing Tyrion's wimpy plans were miserable failures. So it's a really interesting storyline to me. I like the Jaime and Cersei stuff, the Jaime and Tyrion stuff. So the things I liked. Mark, you gave it a 7. I don't usually do numbers, but I would probably give it about a 7 to maybe a 6.5. So there's things that I liked about it. I'm not saying the whole episode was terrible, but there was definitely a lot of things that were just really rushed through that should have been hashed out a little bit more.
Yeah, and I do want to point out that I've watched your video and read the comments and stuff. It seems like there's, and my video as well, there seems like there's a lot of pushback. A lot of people who enjoyed this episode and said, oh, you're being too negative, you're being too harsh on it. So there's that perspective out there as well. And then, of course, there's others who think we're not being harsh enough. So it's interesting to get that sort of stuff. Because I've gotten comments on my episode 2 review and my episode 3 reviews oh, this episode is so rushed. This is the most rushed thing ever. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. It doesn't seem rushed to me. It seems fine. This is the first episode of the season. Hey, whoa, this is rushed. Mm-hmm. And I totally agree with what you guys are saying about this. They need to have another episode, at least one other for this. This episode should have been 2 episodes.
Yeah,
I think that was Dan and Dave being hurry up, we got to go and get this show over with. And
yeah, exactly. Jesus. Sorry, Mark. I was totally cool with them going to Highgarden for the fight and then going back. But this episode, totally agree. The whole thing with Tyrion going to King's Landing for a plot point that I didn't think was strong enough. I just feel like the traveling was crazy, and usually I was fine with it, but this episode took it too far. And plot wise, I feel like they just kind of capture a white just because it's a way to bring everyone together. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and I've heard the criticism that the capturing the white plan was a little convoluted, and I didn't really necessarily think of that when I watched the episode, but it kind of is. There are more direct ways you could accomplish the same goal. First of all, just take Cersei out, and you don't have to get her approval.
And just in general, it made no sense to me. I feel honestly, right now, I can't sit here and say why it's in Daenerys' benefit to capture a white. I still don't understand why Tyrion all of a sudden was oh, you know what? Instead of fighting the war, let's capture a white. And then Jorah volunteers. There were so much character points that I just didn't get.
Yeah, but the thing is that that could have been done right. There could have been explanations. There could have been conversations that fleshed it out and made it more palatable. But the way they didn't do it, they just straight into it, and that's what I mean by rushed. But before we get into too much into details, let's go ahead and break down the episode storyline by storyline, so we can get more into the nitty gritty of this. But before we get into that, I forgot to say this at the top of the video. I should mention it now, just because I know a lot of people watching this are aware, and I think I just need to acknowledge, yes, we are aware that episode 6 has been leaked. None of us here has seen it yet, and even if we had, we wouldn't be talking about it online before it officially airs. So just appreciate no sort of talk about that in the chat or comments. I will be monitoring that. But just be aware, just strictly episode 5 discussion.
Yeah, and we would still like to, at the end, do some speculation on episode 6 because we haven't seen it. So when we get to that part, we don't want to hear anything from you guys in the chat about what has actually happened. For those of you who have already seen it, Cardinal Doomsday, and not to mention any names, but Cardinal Doomsday. But anyone else who has already seen it, do not mention it.
Yeah. Cool. All right, cool. And also other people watching who haven't seen this, they don't want to be spoiled for them as well. Cool. So yeah, let's go ahead and go location to location or whatever. I want to start with Jamie and Cersei. Just their whole sort of storyline this season. The first thing I want to start with is with the Jamie just Bronn swimming out of water. This is, I think, a big nitpick a lot of people had. I had this nitpick, but I watched this one review where they were outraged. They're like, this is outrageous. How can Jamie not be dead? He was sinking to the thing with the armor on. And the thing is, like, didn't bother me. For one, I knew he survived because of the plot leaks. But I think more importantly, I've seen this trope played before. Like, you have season 5 where Tyrion, it looked like when the Stonemen attacked him in Valyria, he looked like he was like at the bottom of the water and sinking, and then all of a sudden he's just out of the water and fine. And also, outside of Game of Thrones, you get to Lord of the Rings. There's a scene where like Sam is chasing after Frodo when he's on the boat and he's drowning. It looks like he's deep in the water, and all of a sudden Frodo's able to pull him out of the water. So I've just seen this trope in TV and movies so much where it looks like this person's like sinking to the bottom when really they just pop up and they're fine. So that's why it didn't bother me, but I don't know how you guys felt about it.
It irritated me personally, just a little bit. Because like plot wise, I feel like watching it, I was like, how do we get Jamie and Daenerys to conflict? And like they're like, okay, so we'll have Jamie ride and then we'll have him jump, and then there we go, he's safe and she's fine, whatever. So I feel like it was just a writing dodge. Like it was like Arya in last season, which pissed me off. She got stabbed and then she jumped overboard. That was them just writing it in for the hell of it, being like, ooh, let's shock the audience. And I feel like this time it was like, we need to have a showdown between the two characters. We'll have Jamie jump in the water, and then we'll just throw it in that he'll magically appear on the other side of the lake. It's totally fine. And like even at the end shot when he's sinking, like to me it seemed like they established that he had heavy armor and he was like sinking. Like I get it, like you can suspend disbelief, but this was just hitting at it for me. Like it seemed like they wrote it in just to correct something, kind of like Jorah with the grayscale, like that didn't really go anywhere. So I'm just left kind of irritated because they just threw him in there for no reason. So I don't know. How do you feel, Akton?
Yeah, I hated it, and I think this is, Mark, you're the most positive person I've ever heard, because this has been universally hated. I've heard different angles of why this was terrible, and I agree with all of them. But it was just... and yes, it's a trope that's been done before, but that doesn't make it okay to do it again. Like that doesn't make it okay to do a bad trope again. I mean, I don't know why they had to shoot it with Jamie sinking so deeply. Like, why? Just to try to make it dramatic. I mean, come on. If they hadn't shot it that way, if they just ended with basically the scene that we see in the trailer. Remember, there's a scene with two people falling in the water that was in the trailer, and everybody was like, who is that? Is that Euron, Theon? Who is that? And it was Jamie and Bronn. If it just ended there, then I would have been a lot more okay with it. But there's a lot of other good points that people brought up. I mean, that they seem to be suddenly a mile away from where the dragons were. I think, Mark, you even said in your review that you hope that they had come up for air before that. They're not trying to say that that's really the first time they came up for air. I've also heard, like, why would Daenerys not be looking for Jamie? I mean, he's really important. I mean, she should have Drogon circling around, like, trying to find him and then roast him when he comes up. I mean, which is a very good point. I mean, Jamie is important. And then also the fact that Tyrion didn't question that Jamie was okay when he's like, oh, I'll just go and talk to Jamie. Like, how did he know he survived? Last he saw him, he got thrown into the water.
Yeah,
and like they didn't care. They're like, oh, we'll just let Jamie go. I mean, very wishy-washy. I mean, there's just so many problems.
But then, after all that, Tyrion at the meeting at Dragonstone says, I need to go to King's Landing to talk to my brother Jamie. How does he know Jamie's alive?
Yeah.
Jamie jumped in the water and like got saved by Bronn. Daenerys doesn't know that Jamie survived. Tyrion doesn't know Jamie survived. So how does he know that Jamie's alive? I don't know. It's frustrating.
Yeah, that's what I just said too. Yeah, but
oh, did you? Sorry.
Yeah.
I was reading the comments.
Yeah, but
that's okay. That's okay. But yeah.
I do want to make it clear that I'm not trying to excuse it in any way, because you're right. I did bash this in my review, and I do think it is definitely a flaw. And even if they did come up from for water before then how come Tyrion or someone else didn't see them coming up from water? You're like, look, there they are.
Right. Yeah.
And well, I will say, like, the one thing again, this is no excuse. There's no excuse for this, but I did say that I did notice on the rewatch at the end of episode 4, you do see, even though Jaime's sinking, you see Bronn is very sort of swimming and very mobile, but still he has to go down, bring Jaime up, and then, go all that distance without being seen. It's just, there's just no excuse. But what I'm saying is, I guess I was sort of desensitized to it because I've seen this trope before. So I wasn't, even though it's an obvious flaw, I wasn't surprised by it. Like, it didn't surprise me that they did that. I was kind of expecting it. And I think the whole Arya thing you talked about, I think that's a very good comparison. And I think that's also why I was desensitized, because that's actually much worse. So, like, after that happens, doing this doesn't seem as bad.
I just feel like, with me personally, I feel like they always choose the shittier way to tell the story. Like, what if instead of having Jaime appear out of the water and escape, why don't they have Daenerys catch him and Tyrion and her have a discussion? They tell her about the army of the dead, and then they use Jaime to talk to Cersei after releasing him in good faith to try and get, in a line, like, in good faith, that whole thing. So it's like, I don't know. I just would have loved seeing certain things happen in different ways and, like, have it be fleshed out more, but I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, and I just want to point out in the chat, Icy Fury said, and Jaime's hand stayed on. That's also a pretty good point. Like, how does his hand stay attached when he was sinking down into the water? But yeah, there's so many flaws.
It did stink very, very heavily of plot convenience. Oh, we want Jaime to survive and go back to King's Landing, so let's just do that. And,
but it would have been an easy fix. And I'm going to talk about some other flaws in this episode. There were some easy fixes to this. They just simply didn't have to show him sinking like that. I mean, there's a lot of things they could have done, but whatever.
All right, cool. So so let's move on to with Jaime and Cersei's conversations. And was Cersei's reaction, like, Jaime was just like, we're fucked. Like, that was just one dragon. She has 2 more, and the Dothraki, like, he kick anybody's ass. And so he knew they were done for. And he goes back to Cersei, and she very predictably, because of Cersei, and she's stubborn and arrogant, is like, no, whatever, doesn't matter. We can still, what do you want us to do? Just give up? Fuck that. We'll just die fighting then. And then in the later scene, when this armistice possibility comes up, Cersei's like, maybe I'll use this as a possibility to sort of backwater and bide for time, because and I think it was kind of smart of Cersei, actually, because she was recognizing that they couldn't defeat her and that they were fucked and needed to find some other way other than brute strength to do it.
Yeah, smart of Cersei, stupid of Dany. Why Dany should just go in for the kill? I mean, you can go in with the dragon and just burn the Red Keep specifically, or just even go to Cersei's room and burn that specifically, and then done. She's done for. I saw a review, Mark, that you might have watched too. It's one of our favorite reviews that we've watched over the years, where one of the people was saying, it was comparing it to the scene with Austin Powers when Seth Green was like, just give me the gun, I'll shoot him, I'll do it. Just give me the gun. Or like somebody said, just give me the dragon, I'll just go and kill Cersei, and then we don't have to worry about this convoluted plot of bringing her a white. But I mean, that's another good reason why. I mean, because now this gives her a big opening. Now she can do these clever, evil plans, which is very smart from her perspective to take this opening. But it's very stupid from Dany's perspective.
Yeah, I don't even understand how Tyrion wouldn't think that Cersei would definitely take advantage of this. And the whole Cersei baby thing, like, she's pregnant. Like, what? Like, you know what I like? I think that's another thing. I feel like they just wrote in, like, oh, that's an emotional tug. Let's make her pregnant. That's great. And I feel like it has no significance to the plot other than make Jaime forcibly loyal to her. So, like, I don't know where they're gonna play that off. I don't know if she's, you know, there's a lot of conspiracies going around that she's not pregnant. I personally think that she is.
Yeah.
So we'll see where that goes. With the capturing a white, from Cersei's point of view, yeah, most definitely. Yeah, I'll sit here and I'll have everyone march into the, you know, King's Landing happily. Like, I just don't understand how the other side didn't see that. So I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I get Cersei's point of view. Daenerys, I don't understand.
Yeah, with the pregnancy, like, I do have a specific theory in mind of why this was introduced, but that relies on some things I read in the plot leaks, so I don't want to get into that until we do our spoiler section at the end of the episode.
Oh, did we say that we were doing a spoiler section at the end? I don't know if we announced
Oh,
that.
well, I'm saying it now.
Spoilers, specifically spoilers for the plot leak, not spoilers for episode 6, which we have not seen.
Yeah, we haven't seen episode 6. Yeah.
Spoilers for the plot, because we're going to use those spoilers for the plot leak to speculate about episode 6.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, like, what do you think of the part of where Cersei was like, says that, you know, like, they're hugging, they're, oh, you're pregnant and lovely, and she's like, don't ever betray me again. To me, this is just, they're just hitting at this, like, they're chipping away at Jaime and building, and I think it's actually brilliantly done. I actually think they're doing a good job at this, of, like, building this doubt in Jaime's mind where you know it's going to lead up to him just saying, now fuck you, Cersei. And he if he was smart, he would know it already. He should know that she's crazy and he should get the hell away from her.
Yeah, and on top of that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, that's definitely one thing that they're not rushing, that they really are hashing out well, is Jaime's kind of transformation that he's going. It's very gradual. That you can see it happening, that he is slowly and gradually, like, veering away from Cersei. And they are, I will give them credit, they're doing a good job with that particular plot point. Go ahead, Max.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. And he even found out that she was totally spying on him in a way. Like, she has, I guess Qyburn has all the little birds now, because she says she hears everything. She knew of Bronn and how he brought the two together. And I found it interesting how she asked if he will punish Bronn for that. I don't think he will, but I think that's interesting. And to Jaime to hear that she was been spying on him and she just let something happen. I think that's another point that would kind of tear away at him.
Yeah, but it shows that she's mad that she would see that as a betrayal. Now, some people were saying, "Oh, what specifically is a betrayal?" Then some people were speculating it's not killing Tyrion. It's like, "Oh, you didn't kill Tyrion, so that's a betrayal. You betrayed me."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think she's actually gonna do anything to Bronn. I think that was just a comment there, just to let Jaime know that she knows.
Yeah, and I'll have to say I wasn't totally clear on what she meant. I mean, I assumed, she must be talking. She's talking about his conversation with Tyrion. Like, I don't know. It wasn't clear to me what she meant when she said, "Don't betray me again." Like, it was a little, I don't know.
Well, I took it that definitely had something to do with Tyrion. I took it as it shows how fucking insane she is that she'd see that as a betrayal, and that's how I took it.
Yeah, I saw that too, because she sees Tyrion as the enemy, and for Jaime to kind of go behind her back and have a meeting with the enemy, I think that's betrayal. I would classify that as betrayal. So.
Yeah, I mean, I knew it had something to do with Tyrion, but she just said she knew about it and allowed it to happen. So, where's the betrayal?
I think it's still a blatant betrayal because he didn't go to Cersei. But she let him know.
But he did go to Cersei as soon as he found out he had talked to Tyrion. He didn't know he was going to
Tyrion. But he didn't say, like, I'm going to go meet with the enemy.
Yeah.
It was the meeting with the enemy, maybe. I don't know.
Well, he didn't know he was going to meet with Tyrion until he got there. And then as soon as he did, he went and told her. So where's the betrayal? Yeah,
but I think that's the chess piece. If she shuts up and doesn't... Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I was saying that just shows how insane she is, that she sees it as a betrayal, that anything talking to Tyrion or anything, even if he went straight to her, it just shows that she's freaking mad.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Mark. I mean, I agree with I think you're right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see that, for sure. I just thought, like, if she knew that Bronn was setting up this meeting, she would say, like, okay, I'll let it happen. I'll see. Like, it's in my immediate interest maybe to have this. But at the same time, it's like she would expect Jaime to come to her first. So she just would sit back and, like, let that happen. And the fact that Jaime would go to Tyrion instead of her, that could be considered betrayal. But yeah.
Yeah, in her mind.
Yeah.
She's freaking insane. But it's also interesting that we get that Jaime reveals to Cersei that it was Olenna that killed Joffrey, and this is something a lot of people, myself, didn't know if we were going to get this because we know that's Olenna told Jaime, and it was interesting how he convinced Cersei, because at first she's like, "Oh, you believed her," but then he just spelled it out. Well, if you were Olenna, who would you want Marjorie to marry, Joffrey or Tommen? And this is actually, I've never seen it spelled out like that in the show before, and that's what I've been saying ever since season 4. That of course she's gonna choose Tommen over Joffrey. So, and I love how that convinced Cersei. Like, she was completely convinced, but her first reaction wasn't, "Oh, well, Tyrion's not so bad." It was, "Oh, I wish I would have killed Olenna even more. You should have gave her a painful death. You should have tortured her." And that is just so Cersei.
Right, and it just makes her hate Olenna more, but it doesn't make her hate Tyrion any less.
Yes.
I mean, it doesn't change her opinion of Tyrion in the slightest. I mean, she's always hated him. I mean, there's stories of her like torturing him when he was a baby, and I mean, she's always hated him, and she set him up. I mean, we assume. I mean, she was the one responsible for Shay's testimony. I mean, she rigged the whole thing. I think she didn't care if Tyrion was guilty or not. Like, it didn't matter if he was guilty or not. She's just always hated him. So I don't think that affects her hatred for Tyrion. Just made her hate Olenna more. That's all it did.
I think she believed it was Tyrion and Tyrion was guilty because she wanted to. That she wanted to believe it was him. So any sort of evidence or reason would just bounce off her because she wanted him to be guilty.
Yeah, but when she found out he wasn't, it doesn't change anything.
Yeah, exactly. Totally agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. So any last thoughts on Cersei and Jaime before we move on?
I'm good with them.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty good. I guess it was interesting seeing Bronn bring the two together. So I thought that was interesting. And then, yeah, Jaime's interaction with Cersei, the whole baby thing was a surprise. So I don't know where that's going to go. But overall, it does seem like it's going into, Jaime's kind of getting pushed away from Cersei. And that the baby bump thing is another way to keep him loyal. But he's not really, he may get to the point where he's not loyal to Cersei. He's loyal to his child. Or so.
Yeah. Oh, I did think of one more thing real quick since you mentioned Bronn. Yeah. Do you guys think Bronn is going over to Tyrion by the end of the season? Because I kind of do. Like, I think they really foreshadowed it, that he's either that or he dies. Like, he either dies or he's going to Tyrion is where I'm.
I think he's kind of, I don't know. I kind of see him as a free agent, as like not really siding with anyone. Like, at the moment, he's still kind of on Team Jaime, but I kind of see him sort of doing his own thing.
He is. I mean, he is, but I think he is in the way that he could just switch sides.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I think he could go to Tyrion, but I think ultimately he'll just do his own thing. I think he's attached to Jaime now because he still wants that castle he sold, but he should know that he's never getting that fucking castle.
But he's put so much stock into Jaime, so
maybe he'll realize that if Tyrion offers him a castle, he'll be like, okay, fuck you, Jaime, I'm over to Tyrion. He's giving me a castle.
Yeah, if Tyrion found out about this, all he'd have to do is tell Daenerys to offer Bronn like a castle twice as big as what Jaime was going to offer, and he'd be over there in a second. Especially, I mean, on the side of the dragons, so fuck yeah, he would be. In a second, he would be running to Daenerys.
Yeah, and I did find his comment about, dragons is where our partnership ends interesting because he just tried to kill a dragon. So if that's where it ended, why didn't he just run off? But whatever.
I think he meant specifically dragons going and wrecking King's
Landing. Yeah,
burning King's Landing. Like, he's not going to be around for that. He's not sticking around to get burnt by dragons in King's Landing, I think is what he meant.
Mm-hmm.
And he also saw firsthand that you can't really kill the dragon. So,
yeah, that's true. That is a good point. Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to that very evil, sinister villain, the Mad Queen Daenerys. Ooh, she's evil. Because I made a somewhat controversial statement in my review where I said I completely agreed with her decision to burn Randall and Dick and Tarly, and I think Varys and Tyrion are wrong. I think she did the only thing she could in that situation. Now, I specifically want to make an analogy, which I was just thinking of earlier, and I think this analogy really fits. Or for those of you who thought this was a very bad or it makes her evil, or even if you don't think it makes her evil, if you think it was just a bad political play on her decision, it reminded me of when Jon executed Janos Slynt. I mean, it's not a one-for-one analogy. There are some differences, of course, because Janos pledged his to the Night's Watch, and Randall never pledged to Daenerys. However, Janos right out said, "I do not recognize you as my leader. You are not my leader," which is the exact same thing that Randall said to Daenerys. "I do not recognize you as my leader, so I will refuse to follow you." And it seemed like everyone's in total agreement that it was the right decision for Jon to execute him, even when he was like, "No, I take it back. I take it back. I take it back. I'll follow you. I'll do whatever you said." Jon still executed him. No one called Jon evil. No one seemed to disagree with him. Whereas in this case, Randall didn't take it back. He was indigent to the end. So if anything, I think Daenerys was even more justified than Jon was. But what are your guys thinking of this analogy?
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy. I think Daenerys, for whatever reason, gets all of this flack that is not equally given to other characters in the show. Jon Snow and Tyrion. I think this is what I said in my review, that if you're gonna call Daenerys the evil queen and she's so evil, she's the Mad Queen, why are you oversimplifying such a complex show where there is no straight up good and evil, where all of our characters, Jon Snow, you've mentioned that example. You've mentioned other examples in the past too. I mean, he's slaughtered a bunch of wildlings. He's done some fucked up shit. Our big hero, Jon Snow. Tyrion has done some fucked up shit. Our big hero, which is what makes Game of Thrones such a great show. That it is not straight up evil versus straight up good. That our good guys can do evil things, and in a lot of cases, our evil guys can do good things. Maybe not with Joffrey and Ramsay, but certainly with Cersei, who we've seen has been very evil, but we've also seen a softer side of her. It's very complex. So to just kind of try to make this black and white and make Daenerys into just the straight up Mad Queen instead of recognizing it for the complex plotline that it actually is just baffling to me. Like, why do you want to take away the brilliant complexity of Game of Thrones and how good and evil is not so black and white? And it's one of the reasons I just love the show to death.
Very well said. Very well said.
One thing I would say is that I'm not somebody like Daenerys. To me, was justified because she said that, "Hey, if you don't bend the knee, then I'm going to kill you." Like, that's my verdict. And I totally agree. Jon did kill Janos Slynt. I think the one key difference is that they all took the black. They are all pretty much nothing, as Jon, as a leader, has to make sure he maintains power and he has strength, because he did that, but he's not trying to take over Westeros. And I think that's where Tyrion's and Varys are a bit upset, is like Randall Tarley should have died. He didn't want to support her, whatever. But I think to immediately lump in Dickon and burn them, like, politically, maybe she should have sold them for a bit, or just Dickon for a bit. I don't know, but I think that's where their complaint comes in, is that she immediately was like, "Okay, bend the knee or die," and she jumped the gun on that. And I think they're just worried that that's gonna hurt her because she just like eliminated the Tarley house. So yeah, but I understand if she did kill Randall, Dickon wouldn't have supported her. So I think it would have ended the same way regardless. So I do think she was justified because that was the shot that she called, and that's necessary.
Well, and I do think that is a valid point. And I think actually, even though I personally believe she was justified, I think it's valid for people to wonder of whether or not this was the right decision for her, if it's going to hurt her in the eyes of the public or hurt her politically. What I don't think is valid is to say that she's the Mad Queen who's being insane, because it's obvious that she wasn't doing this out of insanity. She wasn't just being like, burn them all, that this was a thought out strategic political move. Now, whether or not you agree with that move is another thing. Maybe this was the wrong move to make, but it was a thought out political move, not a burn them all insanity thing.
Mm-hmm. And let's give her credit. The first thing that she did was go with Tyrion's plans, which were the less intrusive plans like let's try to kill the least amount of people. That was her first go-to. Let's go to the more peaceful plans. And those plans failed miserably. So then what else is she left to do? So, I mean, let's not forget that her first go-to was not burn them all. Her first go-to was let's try the peaceful plans. Let's try the less, kill less people plan first. And when those failed, we got to burn Randall Tarley. I mean, that's kind of what she's left with.
And it was funny too because the show made it seem like Tyrion was like, oh my god, I can't believe she's doing this, and they made her seem so bad. But yeah, I agree. Like it wasn't that bad. Like it's totally justified for what she did. Oh god, what was I gonna say? Crap, I had a good point and I forgot it. Dang it.
Well, I was just going to say while you're thinking of that, Max, is that from the promos, when we see Tyrion and Varys together, from the promos for this episode, when they were like, oh, you have to do something about it, that made me think she was going to do something worse. Like she was going to go off the walls and like roast a whole bunch of people, like attack King's Landing or attack a castle and just kill a bunch of civilians. But all she did was kill 2 lords who refused to bend a knee to her.
Actually, you know what? Sorry, go ahead, Akton.
Oh, no, I'm not. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. No, what I did, okay, so what I remembered is I think it was just they were trying to show like the differences between, like everyone said that she's a foreign invader, and I think they were trying to also showcase how she does things differently. Like Tyrion's like, you can't behead them, whatever, and she's like, I'm not beheading them, and then she burns them. Like I think it's just a shock because that's not how Westeros usually does things. So I think it was just setting it up to show that she is different. She's bringing Dothraki. She's burning instead of beheading. Like it's a whole different culture in a way that she's bringing, and I think that makes Tyrion kind of nervous.
Yeah, and I see Timo in the chat making a somewhat good point where she's kind of against what Daenerys is doing, but also agrees that the Mad Queen saying Mad Queen is going too far, not the case, and she brings up a good point, one that I brought up in my review, that even though I do agree with this decision, I can see the other side of it where she's ruling by fear, which is the exact opposite of what she did in Slaver's Bay. It's what the slavers did. They ruled by fear, and in Slaver's Bay she ruled by devotion. Now she's sort of ruling by fear, but the question is, does she really have a choice? I mean, is there anything she could do differently that would make people like her better?
Yeah, and this is why I said in the beginning, this is why I love this aspect of the episode. As much as I pan a lot of other things in this episode, it's a very intriguing debate. There really is no clear right or wrong. Not to go to the extreme that she's the Mad Queen, but to genuinely question, is she really making the right decision? I mean, and I think there are valid points on both sides of that argument, as long as you're not going to the extreme, oh, she's just completely evil and she's the Mad Queen, which is ridiculous. It makes it too black and white, and it's ignoring the complexity of the issue. It's really, this is what makes it really interesting to me, is that, you could make valid points for why she is making the right decision and killing Randall Tarley, as you did in your video, Mark. And you could make, as Timo was saying, you can make good arguments for why maybe this isn't the best thing to do. And that's what makes it really interesting to me, that there is no clear-cut answer to this.
Yeah, absolutely. But me personally, when it comes to comparing Daenerys to Cersei, I think, well, there's no comparison. Cersei's obviously more mad or evil, or I don't like using either of those terms. That's why I'm using their quotes. But that general thing than Daenerys, because if Daenerys was like Cersei, then she wouldn't have done Tyrion's plan at all. She would have went straight to King's Landing, roasted everyone with the dragons. I mean, we see Cersei do the equivalent with the wildfire. She killed hundreds of civilians in order to get what she wanted. People who were just there going to church or just walking by and got smashed by a bell. Whereas Daenerys purposely avoided doing something like that. So I do think that does set the two of them specifically apart.
Yeah, what I would say is Cersei is evil as a person. Daenerys isn't. But in order to have leadership and do what she has to do, you have to do evil things. It's not her as a person. Like, she had to kill those people in order to move forward. Some people may see that as evil, but she has to do what she has to do. Jon had to kill Janos Slynt. Like, if you want to, be respected and ruled in this culture, you have to do sometimes what's considered evil things. Whereas they're not evil, but Cersei I would classify as, more evil in that sense as a person.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Afkin, about Cersei and Daenerys?
I mean, no, not really. I mean, it would just end up repeating what I've been saying before. I mean, this whole thing with Daenerys being, portrayed as the Mad Queen is a little extreme, but Cersei, you could see she has snapped. I mean, she blew up. She basically eliminated an entire religion, and it's funny that people are like not really, concerned about that. I guess she eliminated. It was like if somebody blew up the Vatican and killed the Pope, and all of the bishops and like all the important people in the Catholic religion. I mean, that would be huge. And like nobody seems to like. Oh, she eliminated a religion, whatever. but I mean, Cersei is clearly. Over the top, over the deep end, and Daenerys is in a really tough situation where she has to decide, do I go the high road or do I take the road that's more likely to lead me to victory? So it's a tough spot. Whereas Cersei, it's not even close. She's completely over the top.
Well, I will address Timo in the chat saying, no, Cersei saw a way to get rid of all her enemies in one fell swoop. Same thing Dany was wanting to do. Yeah, wanting to do, but she didn't actually do it. She didn't actually attack King's Landing. In fact, I think that's a fault, and that's something. All right, well, why don't we go ahead and transition to that? Let's transition to the scene where they're around the table and they come up with this plan.
Oh, fuck.
Plan to get the white. I know I'm skipping a few scenes, but I'll get back to them later. But I want to jump into this because this is actually quite dumb of Daenerys, I think. I actually think she should just go, and I think you guys talked about this earlier, go kill Cersei, and then you won't have to worry about making peace with her. And I think that she's worrying too much about not being the Mad Queen, and I think she should be like, "No, fuck that," and go and just set them on fire, and then you're done. You can go attack the White Walkers without having to worry about Cersei because it's done.
I just feel like I wouldn't have such a huge problem with this scene if they used Bran more. Like, I understand he saw them by Eastwatch, but for them to come up with the idea to capture a white, like I feel like that is so. I can't even comprehend it because I feel like it's so stupid. Like, what if Bran came to them and said, "I need you to do this north of the wall," or like gave them something to do rather than like Tyrion? I feel like shouldn't have come up with that idea to capture a white. Like, I just don't understand how that makes sense and how Daenerys got so on board. And she naturally was worried about if she went north, then Cersei would crawl in. And yeah, if she did go to King's Landing and end the war, then great. But she has been stopping that. Like she hasn't wanted to do that in so long, and like for this whole season. So I don't know. I left this scene to me was like, I don't even know what to say. It was just all over the place. Like I don't know. I feel like they could have done it so much better.
Yeah, and that extra episode would have really helped here too. But it's interesting that you say that Bran should have, given Jon some instructions, because that was exactly what my prediction was. Because of course we all knew what the plot leak was. We knew that they were going to have this plan about going to get the white. We did not know where the plan came from. So my prediction was that Bran, and I didn't know Bran was going to be all weird and autistic acting when I made the prediction, but my prediction was that Bran was going to, for some whatever reason, was going to determine that we need to capture a white, and because of his visions, and he was going to pass this information along to Jon. And that I think that would have been better. Although I did like that it came from Tyrion, because it made sense that Tyrion was trying to find a way to temper the Mad Queen and Daenerys. So I did like that aspect. But the scene was a mess. It was a complete mess. It was just very poorly written, very, very rushed. It is just something that should have been deliberated over 2 episodes.
Yeah, it felt weird to me. Like Dany and Tyrion all of a sudden seem more concerned with the White Walkers than anything else. All of a sudden,
as soon as he read,
they're completely on Jon's side. Like I get that, Jon showed her the pretty little cave drawings and she was a bit starting to buy him a bit more. But the fact that she'd be totally 100% on board. Yes, White Walkers is my top priority. What? When the hell did that happen?
Yeah, I just feel like the whole thing changed, which I don't completely understand. As soon as Jon read that letter, Daenerys was like, "Oh, I'd like to help you, but I can't," because Cersei would move in, and then Tyrion all of a sudden her hand says, "Oh, I'll come up with a plan for Jon. So you guys go north of the wall, capture White." I just feel like it didn't add up, and like, does Tyrion not know his sister? Like, obviously, she's not a person that you want to parlay with. And like, he wants to fight with her to fight the White Walkers. I just feel like with Bran, I feel like he's a character that you could have used him in this scene, and I would have appreciated it more. Like, what if Bran was like, "I see Cersei right now feels like she's losing this war. I realize that she's one of those people who would betray you, but in this situation, she would allow a seize if you guys go north and capture White. We need to bring people together." I just feel like coming from Bran, I would be able to suspend my disbelief enough for me not to be pissed off. But with Tyrion, I feel like it was kind of a stretch.
Well, it was a stretch, like Mark said, that all of a sudden Daenerys and Tyrion are on board, especially Daenerys. Like, she's got Cersei. I mean, she's got her right where she wants her. Like, she could just wipe her out any second now. I mean, she's got the advantage that she would suddenly go do a 180 and go complete opposite direction and like, oh yeah, sure, let's go get a White and let's truce with. Where does that come from? Like, when did she even believe in the White Walker? Like, it just is out of nowhere. It doesn't make any sense that Daenerys would go along with this plan.
Yeah. Yeah, and why, even if Daenerys is okay with the plan, why is she just, I said this in my review, why is she just sitting on her ass, like twiddling her thumbs? Oh, good, you go off and get your White. I'm just going to sit here and not fucking conquer Westeros, which she's here to do. Why is she halting her attack? Even if she doesn't want to, like, attack King's Landing or burn civilians, there's something else she could be doing. And I was very pissed off we didn't get any sort of more exposition on how the other Westeros lords feel about her. We got this talk where Jaime and Cersei are like, okay, we're completely fucked, we're beaten. I would have liked to seen more that show don't tell that she's conquered Westeros, that she's beaten Cersei. Show more of what's going on. There's tons of ways they could have done this very simply by having Tyrion read a letter or having a very quick scene of some other castle. And what the hell is happening with Grey Worm? I'm pissed off they don't even mention why she's just he's hanging out in Castle Rock twiddling his thumbs as well. This whole thing like pissed me off that they needed to spend way more time on this.
Yeah, Grey Worm and also Theon. Theon showed up like, I would like the Queen to help me get Yara out, and then poof, vanished. Where is he?
Yeah.
Like, why is he not in that meeting? Why has the Yara thing not been addressed? Like, what is he doing right now? Like, it's so weird. It's as if some of these characters who aren't on screen just vanish into non-existence, which is not typical for Game of Thrones. It's been better written than this in the past.
Yeah, it just
like, just to have characters who aren't on screen, it's like they don't even exist, like Grey Worm and Theon.
It feels like the show is staying stagnant because the producers are scared to finish certain storylines. Like, I feel like Cersei has plot armor because they like her as a character, so they're going to do whatever it takes to keep her in the story. Like, what would happen if they took King's Landing over in episode 5 and then they decided they had to go north? Like, it's like, I just don't understand why they're keeping her around continuously, and I feel like they're just stretching it out, and I feel like they're going to continue to stretch it out into the next season. Like, it's just finish it. Like, I don't know. I just feel like they're really stretching it, and we could have crazy shit happening every episode, and I just feel like they're really prolonging things, and they're writing around it rather than dealing with the problem.
Well, I don't mind that so much. I do see the appeal of keeping Cersei around for the next season and having her be like this thorn who's going to be the distract from the real fight, is actually going to sabotage them. I think that's a good idea. It's just the way that they're executing it is not so good because they're rushing through it. I mean, there's better ways that they could accomplish this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I absolutely agree with that, Mark. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. And speaking of things that were rushed, let's talk about Jorah. This is another thing that really bothered me. We waited like 2 seasons for Jorah to get back to Daenerys. He's like, oh, hi, they hug in the next scene. Okay, see you later.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck? Why did he volunteer? Like, some people are trying to justify this of him volunteering. Oh, I'll go fight because, he knows that Daenerys wants to get a White. Again, why is that her top priority? Why is that something Jorah was like, oh, I need to go out and why is that? Why is that all of a sudden the top priority is to get a White when Daenerys' main goal is to conquer Westeros? And why George is so blindly volunteer, especially him, because he's been waiting forever. Look at it from his perspective. He's been from away from his Khaleesi. He's been wanting nothing more than get back to her. He finally gets cured. He never thought he was. He thought he'd die. He never thought he'd see her again. So he finally gets back to her, and the first thing he does is, I'm going to leave. What?
I know. And that's not even in her best interest. Oh, it's so frustrating.
Yeah, and he agreed to it before she even did. Like, before she even thought it was a good idea. He was like, "Oh, I'll go up there because I want to, I want to serve my queen." I'm like, "Well, she hasn't even agreed to this plan yet. So how do you know you're serving her that way?" I mean, it was.
And Daenerys doesn't even believe him yet. Like, Jon even says to Tormund when they arrive at Eastwatch, like, "Hey, like, we're here to convince both queens." Like, she's not convinced. So it's like, I just, like, Jorah's like, "Oh, don't worry, I will fight for Jon." Like, it's like totally not. I feel like it's not in Daenerys' best interest.
Yeah.
And then they just shoehorn him in after the dragon pet scene. So it's like, I don't know.
Well, because they need to interrupt Daenerys because she was asking Jon
before
about,
she wanted to know about the heart.
Yeah, about the resurrection. So they had to have something to interrupt her because God knows they had this conversation going further. But the thing with Jorah is that he actually make way more sense, especially from his perspective, to be at her side and give her advice because Tyrion's been doing a shit job at it. So it seems like that's where he needs to be. I mean, that's what he's been doing like for the first like 3 or 4 seasons of her journey. He was the one giving her the sage advice. So that's where he needs to be. He's not like this great warrior. I mean, I know he's a good fighter, like we've seen in the fighter pits, but he was better. He was more valuable to her as a like advisors, a military advisor, someone who would give her advice about Westeros and whatnot. And that's where he needed to be. So I think it seems very plot convenience to get this hastily thrown together fellowship, which we'll get to shortly. But
Yep.
All right, cool. So let's move on to another hastily thrown together member of the Fellowship, Gendry. Now, I will say I didn't have as big of an issue as you did, Afkin, with Gendry. I don't know. I think I sense a bit of Gendry hate coming from me, but I do think you do make a lot of good points. I do think it was definitely fan service. I think having Gendry show up was again, very rushed, very sudden. Like I was hoping, like I knew, like me and Max, we talked about this last week in our spoiler section for this because we knew that Gendry was going to be introduced in this episode and leave to go up north. And we're saying, I wonder how they're going to pull this off without it feeling rushed. And the answer is they didn't. It felt very rushed and felt very out of nowhere. Now, I wasn't quite as critical because I do think it makes sense to bring Gendry back. And I do think it does make some sense. Like some people were pointing out in the comments that Davos has this sort of fatherly feeling of Gendry from saving his life and that he'd want to check up on him. It doesn't make that much sense that he'd want to take him to Winterfell just to be a smith, which is his original plan, and why Gendry all of a sudden. Now, with Gendry all of a sudden wanting to join an adventure, that, again, I think that kind of makes sense because he had that same attitude with the Brotherhood. Like, he wants to join, he wants to make a difference. But it's just the way it was handled just felt like way too rushed and hard to swallow.
Well, first of all, I want to make it clear that there is no Gendry hate coming from me. A couple people in the comments also made that mistake. I wanted to see Gendry back. I love Gendry. I wanted to see it handled well, and it was completely botched. And I do not think that this idea of Davos going to get him from going to get him to bring him up to be a blacksmith in Winterfell made even the tiniest bit of sense. First of all, Winterfell is, I'm sure being a blacksmith in Winterfell in the north is probably like a prime job. There's probably hundreds of blacksmiths lined up around the corner to do that. And so why would you need to go to Flea Bottom to get one? And why does Davos even care about a blacksmith from Winterfell? Doesn't make any sense. And it's funny, like there was a couple people in the comments who tried to make excuses for it and provide an explanation. And their explanation, I think 2 or 3 different people said this to me, that the explanation was, well, Davos wanted to go get a blacksmith to forge weapons out of the dragon glass. And I said, yes, that would have been an awesome explanation had they used it. But that's not what they said. They said nothing about that. In fact, I mean, that's such a simple fix because they could have, I mean, I'm picturing they could have even like dropped the line in a previous episode where John was saying to Davos, "Oh, look at this dragon glass. We don't have anybody who can make blacksmith this into weapons. It would be great if we could forge these into weapons, to set up for it, and then have the explanation be, hey, Davos be like, hey, I know a great blacksmith. Let's go get him to forge this dragon glass into weapons." I would have bought that, but the show didn't do that, and this is what really pisses me off, because it's like they're not even trying. Like they didn't even try to come up with a very simple explanation like that would have worked. They're just throwing Gendry in just because fans love it, and the fans are eating it up, and you're reinforcing their behavior. You know what's going to happen next? We're going to get the Clegane Bowl, and there's going to be no reason for it. They're just going to start fighting each other, and it's going to be stupid and make no sense, and the fans will eat it up because Dan and Dave now know they can get away with that. They don't have to think. They don't have to write. They can just throw something in for fan service, and the fans will eat it up, and the writing is just going downhill from there. Like they know now they don't need to always have good, intelligent writing. They can just throw shit in there that makes no sense for fan service, and the fans will eat it up. And that's exactly what happened here. And they're going to do it again. If not Clegane Bowl, it'll be some other fan servicey thing that they'll do that will make no sense. Because they know they can get away with it now. Why try? Why even try to come up with a very simple solution? Like you could just have Gendry make weapons out of dragon glass. That would have made sense. Well, but it just irritates me to the core.
There's another possibility too that me and Max talked about last week, is that Gendry could say, "Hey, Gendry's the only heir to Robert Baratheon, so let's parade him as the Lord of the Stormlands in order to get the Stormlands on our side." Which I said in my predictions all the way back, and that would have made sense for them to seek Gendry out specifically for that, because only Gendry could do that. But no, they didn't mention it. It's just like, oh, let's just have him. I don't know. They didn't even give a reason.
Even in the featurette, Dan and Dave, holy shit. Dan and Dave in like the featurette describing the episode, they're like, yeah, well, we know that everyone likes Gendry, so we knew that Tyrion had to go to King's Landing, and we know who's there. Gendry. So we thought it'd be great to bring him back. Like they literally said, like, oh, we just shoehorned him in for you guys. You're welcome. Like they literally said that. Like, what the fuck? Like, I made like in my predictions, I went in depth on like why they would need Gendry, and Davos just goes, "Hey man, you want to come with us?" And then he hops on. Pissed me off. It's just like it irritated me a lot, because I feel like the whole mission going to King's Landing was misguided to begin with. Like they're gonna bring the Hand of the Queen in to talk to his brother, who he doesn't even know is alive, for like a minute. But the whole Gendry thing, like I wish they handled him a bit. Like I loved seeing Gendry. I just feel like he was the butt of a joke in every single scene he was in. He was always waiting for that punchline. And Davos got him for no reason. Davos is telling him to hide his name. And he got him for no reason. Like, it's like the way I thought it would be is, what if Sam actually discovered something at the Citadel, which I'll get to later. Fucking hell. Why was Sam at the Citadel? He literally discovered nothing. He literally discovered hardly anything. And then, fuck, like at least if he discovered how to forge Valyrian steel, that could be a formula that he would send to Dragonstone, again, helping Jon out. And maybe that's where Gendry could be valuable. We don't have a blacksmith. Davos, I'm a smuggler. I know this bastard boy, Baratheon boy named Gendry. He knows how to forge. Maybe he could do it for us. I'm going to go to King's Landing. Tyrion would be like, oh, sure, I'll go along. Like, I feel like the whole mission was misguided, and it should have been revolved around Gendry and not the meeting with Jaime and Tyrion, because I feel like that innately doesn't make any sense. So I just wish they handled Gendry better and they gave him a purpose.
I agree.
Yeah, and to address what you guys were saying about the Baratheon thing, that was another thing that one of my commenters tried to use as an excuse. Like, there were people in my comments making rational explanations and saying that that's what the show was doing. Like, oh, what the show was doing was having Davos go get a blacksmith to make dragon glass. No, it wasn't. They didn't say that.
They did.
Somebody else also said, oh, what he was doing was going to get the Baratheon heir for the Stormlands. That would have been a great explanation.
They literally discredited it the next scene. Like, in the next scene, he's walking with Davos at Dragonstone, and he's like, I don't want to forge steel. No, I don't want to do that. And then Davos is like, hide your identity, whatever. Yeah. And then he immediately goes, hi, I'm Robert's kid. And then they have this little interaction, and it's just like, I'm a fighter. You know, it's just, I feel like they could have used him for so much more than just the butt of a joke and a guy who has a warhammer. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. Like those explanations those people were given would have been great if the show actually did them. But yeah, I'm wanting to move on to keep things going, and I do want to take a little bit of time off to talk about the teleporter because I know I've seen it all over the internet that a lot of people are explaining this episode. In general, people are like, so Davos went from Dragonstone to King's Landing back to Dragonstone up to Eastwatch in one episode, and a lot of it. And I still think, if you're familiar with my stance on the teleporter, I think it's a valid complaint. It's a valid flaw in this show, but I don't actually have an issue with it because if it helps move the story along, then fine. But it is a writing flaw, but it doesn't bother me. So I haven't actually complained about it at all this season. And that's not because I don't think it's there. I don't think that because it's not a flaw. I do think it's a flaw. And I've made a whole video addressing all these straw man arguments people come up with, like, oh, time passes, they should just have a card saying 3 months later. But that argument falls apart when you examine it. Also, different timelines are going at different rates. That argument also falls apart when you examine it. But still, knowing that rationally, I still don't have an issue with, and the teleporting thing, the movements fast, hasn't bothered me at all this season, and I'll tell you why. After Varys went from Dorne to Marine and back to freaking Westeros within the span of like a couple of scenes, anything else after that seems tame in comparison. Like, to me, that broke me. And that was like, so anything else is going to be a pale shadow to that, in my opinion. So none of it bothers me anymore.
I have a different reaction because I have been very, very forgiving of the teleporter all season long because, all right, they want to get moved through this story. They got 13 episodes left. You got to have Euron, suddenly go from the Narrow Sea to King's Landing to Castle Rock. Fine, you got to do that. But this episode was it kind of crossed the line for me. Like, it was, I mean, and I see what you're saying about Varys, but at that point we hadn't already had a whole bunch of teleporters immediately preceding that. So to me, it was like, okay, fine, teleporter, that's fine. They need to do it. Fine. And then after a while, I'm just like, come on, throw us a bone here. Try to make sense. Try to have some good writing. I mean, it's just like they don't care. I'm getting back to my point with Gendry. That they could have easily come up with a reasonable explanation, but they knew they didn't need to, because they knew the fans would just eat it up if they just threw Gendry in there for no reason. So it's like they don't care about trying anymore. Like, they don't care about their work anymore. It's just like, we can just do the teleporter like crazy, and who cares? Like, so that's kind of what got me, is that they're going too far. And as Max mentioned earlier, like, it's hard to suspend disbelief anymore. Like, they're asking us to suspend too much disbelief. All I'm asking is, meet me in the middle somewhere. Try. Just try to make a little bit of sense. I mean, try. At least have Davos go from King's Landing to Dragonstone to King's Landing to Dragonstone to Eastwatch over 2 episodes. At least over 2. Like, throw me a bone here. Make some effort. It's just a little too far for me. It's crossing the line.
Traveling for me was fine. My suspension of disbelief is fine enough for me. I just write it off as, hey, like, from the scene that we last saw to now, they've traveled. Like, I can suspend disbelief enough. The stuff that really blew my mind is just certain aspects of the show that it crossed the line and it pulled me out. But the traveling wasn't one of them. With the producers of the show giving up, I honestly wonder what their perspective is, because I can guarantee any of us 3 could write something better than what they did this episode. Like, I just feel like it was ridiculous. Like, I feel like they sat down for a cup of coffee and they wrote the whole freaking script. Like, I feel like they just didn't use everything they had. And, like, I don't know if you guys have got this vibe, but I feel like every scene we get with a character, I feel like they're calling back to a past season and they're having a conversation discussing something that we already know. And it's not establishing new things. It's just seeing 2 characters communicate about something we already know. And it just frustrates me. Like, Jaime telling Cersei about Olenna, I didn't love that scene just because Jaime spelled out. See, I don't know. I didn't like it because I knew what their motives were. I knew why. And, like, I feel like there's a lot of scenes of people just rehashing about things that we already know rather than establishing new things. So I'm just, yeah.
I don't know. I think they should do both, and it gets back to what we're saying. They needed another episode. They're trying to do too much in this one episode, and it's just And I think the teleporter is just a side effect of that, of everything being crammed into one episode, and then just doing too much. Where this should have been 2 episodes, not so they could get the time traveling distance more believable, but that would just be a side effect if you took the time to tell these explain a lot more of what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm actually really curious. Like, Dan and Dave have a clear plan of, like, they said 6 episodes for season 8. In, like, my dream world, they'd be like, oh yeah, maybe we should take another 2 episodes to tell a proper story. Because, like, I hope that they take feedback. Like, I hope that they don't just stick to their guns, because clearly they said that they have 7 episodes this season, and that's all they need to tell their story. Well, clearly they need more than that, and I hope that they establish that for next season, which I know that they won't.
Yeah,
but yeah, exactly. They won't. Well, but one can hope.
You gotta remember that there's us, and there's people who are echoing our sentiments, but there's a large portion of the fan base who are like, go for it. Like, we love Gendry, we love everything, they're great, and they're not gonna. So there's not enough negative feedback, I think, for them to change what they're doing. And they have said before that they don't necessarily respond to the fans, and the whole Arya thing last year got a whole bunch of really negative feedback, and with her having the Wolverine powers, and they've done worse things than that this year. So I don't think that they're
I don't know. I think I've seen a lot of evidence that they do respond to the fans to some degree. Not always. Sometimes they don't care, but I see a lot of examples. The most prime example is writing off the Sand Snakes and just getting rid of the whole Dorne storyline as soon as the Backlash season 5. And I think there's more examples. I think there are more examples this season of them. Like Gendry is like, I think that's responding to the fan base as well. Let's bring Gendry back. And of course, come on, I thought you were rowing this whole time. That was an obvious.
Wink, wink. I think D&D literally in the featurette said that was a little weak to the fans. Like, I think they literally said that, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, and I said that in my review too. That's going too much to try to please fans. But that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about changing their plan that they already have because of fan feedback. Like, they're not going to do that.
I don't know, but I know that they've changed it. Like with Jorah, like they gave him grayscale. I'm so pissed off that Sam's only reason at being at Old Town to learn about White Walkers was to actually cure Jorah of grayscale. It's just like I feel like they backstepped, and I hate seeing.
I know we're not on Sam yet, but I do want to say that we don't know what's in those books he took yet, so that could prove to be a reason for him being. Although he wouldn't have needed to be there for 5 episodes just to steal books and run off, but we don't know what's in those books yet.
Cool. So let's go ahead and move on to the Fellowship, or some people are actually calling it the Magnificent Seven, which might be a more apt analogy because that's what it did kind of feel like. And there are 7 of them, and it did because Magnificent Seven. They would be like, oh, there starts out with just 2 here, Jon and Jorah, and then it's like, oh, now you're 3, Gendry comes, and now you're 4. Now we have these people. We're gonna go off on an adventure together, and we don't really have anything in common. So the idea of it worked in the Magnificent Seven, so it could have worked here again if they spent more time on it, if didn't so rushed and hastily. And that scene when they're in the cell at Eastwatch, it's just like they were just bickering for the sake of bickering, especially when Tormund went to Jorah. And this, as funny as Akton, that both you and I pointed this out in our review, that especially when he went to Jorah, it's like, oh, your name's Mormont, blah, blah, blah. Really? It seemed like they just wanted forced bickering just to have them bickering. It just didn't really work. They needed to spend more time on this scene.
Yeah, and I was happy to see that you agreed with me on that, Mark, because I definitely got a little bit of pushback on that. I got a couple comments arguing with me on that, but it was so ridiculous. Like, really? Like, why do you care that? You're best pals with the leader of the organization that has been hunting your people for centuries. And somehow, just because this guy who was never in the Night's Watch happens to be a son of one of thousands of people over the centuries who have hunted your people, like it was so contrived, so forced. and I just didn't buy it. I hated this whole scene up until the point. I did like it when John was like, "Hey, we're all on the same side," and Kendra's like, "What do you mean we're on the same side?" And he's like, "Because we're breathing." And I was like, "Good job, congratulations, John." Exactly. And I thought they still could have had that scene where people bickering, but they really should have toned it down quite a lot. It was just like the whole scene. It was like each person going to the other, going, "I hate you. No, I hate you.
You could literally,
I hate you.
You could literally label it.
I hate you.
You could have labeled that scene the bickering scene because that's all it was. That's literally all it was.
I would have liked to seen a little bit of that toned down a lot, and so you can still have John say, "Hey, we all got to work together because we're breathing, we're alive, they're the dead." I think that would have been great, but it was too much.
But I will say, though, I think we did the one bickering I did think we needed was Gendry not liking the Brotherhood and saying you can't trust them. They sold me to be killed by a witch. If they hadn't mentioned that, I would have thought. If Gendry was like, "Oh, look, sure, we'll go along," then I would have thought that would have been fake. I think they did need that, but the whole scene could have been handled better, though.
Yeah, I was fine with the scene, and it was cool seeing everybody together. But like watching it, it made me feel like the show was working backwards. Like they were like, "Oh shit, this is really cool. The Marvel Cinematic Universe and the DC Universe, man, they make a shit ton of money combining all these people. Let's take all of our favorite characters and make them go north." And then they wrote backwards from that, and they're like, "Fuck, how do we get everyone together? White, capture one." Oh shit. So I just I wish they had a better purpose. Right. I feel like they worked backwards. Honestly, it's frustrating.
Yeah, it seems like even the writing for this episode was rushed. Like they needed to flesh this out more. But anyway,
so I don't know how it's going to go north of the wall. Jace, all right, go ahead, Mark.
Well, I was about to move on for another topic, unless you guys have something else to say about this.
No, we can move on.
All right, cool. So let's get back to Sam, which we sort of touched on a little bit. I almost forgot he was in this episode. I have to start out by saying I actually disagree with you, Max. I actually think there was a purpose of Sam being in Old Town. It could have been more than simply curing George Grayskull, because as Akton points out, he has the books, and so he could learn something further from it. And I think it was kind of the point, though, is that, and also a good point for his character. It's a good turnaround point for his character, because I love how when he leaves, he echoes what his father said to him. I don't want to just be someone writing about the achievements of better men. And so it sets him up to be more active and the main story going forward and actually do something. So in that sense, I can see it's necessary. Plus, it was kind of cool that he, went there thinking that being a maester would be great and he'd learn all this stuff and he'd be able to do a lot of good, but he just shows up there and just cleans up a bunch of shit for a bunch of closed-minded people, arrogant people who refuse to do or say anything. And I think it was a good revelation that he came to realize that these guys are not going to help me, so I need to take matters in my own hands.
Yeah, I just wish that they had more for him while he was at the Citadel. His first piece of advice to Jon was that there's dragon glass at Dragonstone, which Stannis already told him last season, or in season 5. And then he had nothing. He cured Jorah of Grayscale, and I get it. He did steal the books, but I just wish he might have found something that would have led to something. What he got out of it was he shut Gilly up after her findings of Rhaegar, or her thing about him being remarried in Dorne. But and he shut her up with that. So that's definitely probably going to come into prominence later. I just wish he got more out of it rather than just not finding anything or discovering anything until he gets to Winterfell. And I did like that last scene, what he mentioned about Randall Tarley, that he doesn't want to, read about the history of better men. He wants to, do things himself. And I think it was cool because his dad died in that episode as well. And so I'm sure Sam is significant and he's going to have a significant role going forward. And I think what he's saying is true. He is going to be more important than just reading about other people.
Yeah, and I did want to point out in the chat what I saw something about. Cardinal Doomsday asked, does Sam still have Heartsbane? And that's a good point. So a lot of people were assuming this was setting up for a confrontation with him and his father, but we know that's not going to happen now. And I'm actually fine with that. I think Heartsbane was more of a setup for he's going to use it against the White Walkers. or at least give it to someone who will be able to use it against White Walkers.
Well, clearly we're setting up for something with Sam finding out about his father. I mean, there's got to be something there. I mean, besides just, the ramifications of him being the, heir to Hornhill, that is assuming that he gets excused from the Night's Watch, or the Night's Watch no longer exists, or something like that, then he can become the heir to Hornhill. But besides just that, just kind of, the emotional ramifications of, this is a horrible person to him. He sent him to the wall, but it's his father. And also his brother was always nice to him. I'm interested to see like what they're setting up for Sam finding out about that. I mean, it clearly seems to be a little bit of a side plot because it's not what Sam's main function on the show is going to be moving forward. But I'm curious to see how Sam's going to react when he finds out.
Yeah, and they like purposely set it up for him not to find out. So I think that's really interesting. And in regards to Heartsbane, I just wish it made somewhat of a presence in this season. Like he stole it. And I feel like Sam's role is he goes to different establishments and steals shit. So now he has the books. And like, I wish that they brought the sword, because I feel like it'd be natural if like he finds out that Dragonglass is on Dragonstone. Perfect. He knows that Dragonglass kills White Walkers. So what's the next step? Valyrian steel. That's his father's sword. Like learning how to reforge, melt it down. He could have used it to make 2 swords. I just feel like it was a missed opportunity, but who knows what they're going to do with it in the future.
I'll agree with you if nothing gets done with them in the future. For the moment, I think it's still possible that both Heartsbane and the books will probably, they were set up, they were the Chekhov's gun that will be paid off in next season or at the end of this season. Well, at least that's just my thinking of it. And if it's not the case, then I'll agree with you. But at the moment, I'm still waiting and see mode about it. And getting back to like Sam, like implications of, I get the feeling that they purposely made it so Sam didn't hear about his family dying, is because they want to save this revelation of him in line to be Lord of Hornhill, which is really what I think they're going to go at. I think it's very easy that he could just cast aside the Night's Watch thing. I mean, John or Danny would be like, okay, you're not in the Night's Watch anymore. I'm like, even if he said, oh, I don't feel like being in the Night's Watch anymore, who's going to stop him? You think John's going to send executioners? Dollar's Ed going to be like, oh, let's go kill Sam. That's not even an issue to be said. I think that's definitely what they're building to. And plus the fact that he obviously wants to be a family man with Gilly. And so I really see him not in being with the Night's Watch anymore pretty soon.
Well, people are expressing in the chat what I have been saying for a couple of years now. And I know, Mark, I think this is a point of disagreement with us because you haven't always agreed with this. But what people are saying in the chat is there's not going to be a Night's Watch at the end of the show. There's not going to be a wall at the end of the show.
No, I'm not.
I felt that way. Okay, I have felt that way for a long time. By the end of the show, there's not going to be a Night's Watch. So that's an easy out for Sam. There's going to be no obligation to an organization that no longer exists.
I can definitely see that happening.
The White Walker resolution or the White Walker War will be resolved one way or the other. What do you need the Night's Watch for anymore? Yeah. There's not going to be a wall. What do you need the Night's Watch for anymore? So that's how Sam becomes Lord of Hornhill. But what I was saying though, I think there's got to be. We're also going to see like an emotional side of his reaction, not just he's Lord of Hornhill. Like I think there's got to be for the character of Sam. For his character development, there's got to be also other implications other than just the ramifications of him now being Lord of Hornhill.
Well, yeah, I agree.
And possibly Lord of the Reach, as you've mentioned before.
Yeah. I think that's a strong possibility because technically Randall was the last Lord of the Reach, so he would be in line for that. But but the fact that he didn't hear about it, his family's death, does make me think that they're planning for the long term. So they're waiting to pay this off till like after the Night's Watch is gone. And so I think that is a very strong possibility. Cool. So let's go ahead and talk about the annulment with Prince Rhaegar. Which a lot of people have been complaining about this, and I thought it was kind of cool the way that like she just casually said it, and Sam didn't even listen to her because he was so wrapped up and being pissed off with the Maesters. And any casual viewer who's not like an obsessed fan who knows about Rhaegar and all this stuff would have missed it easily. So I did think that was kind of cool, but the whole idea of, oh, we're going to set things up so Jon is legitimate heir to the Seven Kingdoms, I don't like that. And I think this is obvious setup for a place I did not want the show to go. So I'm not really happy about that. Of course, we kind of knew this was coming from the plot leaks, but I was hoping it was wrong, but apparently not.
Nothing's wrong in those freaking plot leaks.
I agree with you 100%. As far as the way that information was delivered, I've heard people complain about that what, really, Gilly's the one who tells us this? I have no problem with this whatsoever. I mean, I don't think Gilly's going to be the one who tells Jon. I think so. As far, I actually thought it was really clever, and this is probably one of the better things that this episode did. Frankly, was the way that they delivered this information. It was very clever and very sneakily done. And this is not the final. This is not how Jon finds out. This is not This is just how the audience finds out. So I was fine with it, but I agree with you 100% on the ramifications of Jon Snow having a legitimate claim to the throne. Really, I was hoping the show would not go in that direction. Looks like we are. I'm still going to be okay as long as it doesn't end with, Jon and Dany on the throne together, living happily ever after. Which I absolutely do not really believe that that's where they're going. So I'm fine.
I had my doubts with all the fan service they've been doing.
Right. Well, if they want to do fan service, they'll have Jon, Tyrion, and Daenerys riding dragons together because that's what everybody wants.
Yeah, with the Prince Rhaegar thing, I agree with Jon. Like with Jon Snow, I don't think his character is one that should be legitimized. I think that he's important as a character because of his bloodline, not him being legitimized. But like the way it was done, I kind of disagree with you, Akton. I just think that I wish that the show showed us rather than tell us. And I feel like that since they don't have enough time, they're like, oh, just have Gilly say it. Why won't we see a bit? I would love to see a vision with Bran showing us that rather than Gilly stumbling through it to tell us that Rhaegar annulment and just you know what I mean? I would love to see it rather than them say it. And I feel like with Bran now, they're kind of throwing him under, not using him as much. And I don't know if we're going to get another vision from him at all. I feel like we're going to buy him as the person who knows everything, and everything he says we take as fact rather than seeing it ourselves. And I think that takes away visually from the show, and it just makes it more, I don't know. I don't like it.
Well, we could still see it. I mean, we could see it also. I agree with you. If that was the only way that we ever got that information, I would agree with you. But I just assume that's not. I assume we're getting more. I assume we are getting a brand vision. I assume there's going to be a lot more to it. I just think this is the very first introduction to it. I thought it was good. But if that was the only way we ever heard about it ever, I would agree with you. But I do think there's still a possibility we will get a brand vision and we'll actually see it.
I don't know. I think even if we don't get a brand vision, I'd actually be fine with it. I don't think we actually need to see it. Maybe I feel this way because I don't think we need it at all. But I do agree with you, Max, that Bran has been severely underused this season. I was expecting a lot more visions and a lot more.
And I agree with that too. We haven't had a single brand vision of the past, or future, or anything this season. I absolutely agree with that.
Just having being a creep and talking about the night his sister was raped. And
it's I don't know. I hope the show. I want them to establish Jon as a Targaryen visually before they explain it to us with Bran and with Sam and all these different characters who are looking into it. I want a scene where Jon summons Rhaegal as kind of an announcement, hey, he could be Targaryen, and then they kind of feed us that. I don't want them to kind of confirm it because I feel like this is it's decelerizing the reveal. She already hinted at it, and I feel like the show is literally going to do this. Sam ignored her. I feel like Sam is going to somehow be reminded of this book and be like, oh yeah, Gilly, you told me about Rhaegar, right? And then he's just going to remember it, and he's going to read it again and discover, oh my God, he got remarried. And that's literally how it's going to be. I think he's just going to remember what Gilly said to him, and that's how they're going to propel it forward.
Yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see that happening. All right, cool. So if there's no more on Sam, I want to move on to Winterfell. And I actually didn't have that big of an issue with the storyline being rushed, to be honest. I was actually pretty happy with it. I mean, I can understand the other perspective. I went on a little rant in my latest video about how everyone's complaining that Littlefinger seems like an idiot now. He seems like he's just in the North twiddling his thumbs, and he's not the big mastermind schemer that he used to be in the first couple of seasons. But I disagree, because in the first couple of seasons, we didn't actually learn of any of these big schemes till like much later, till like season 3, season 4. For the first couple of seasons with Tom, he was kind of, well, he did betray Ned, but still, like, we do see a lot of him like sitting there and apparently not doing nothing, but you know, there's wheels turning behind wheels. Now, if it turns out to be true and he doesn't actually try to do anything and he is just, you know, sitting there doing nothing, then I'll agree. But I still have the feeling that we have yet to see like his big play. And I think his obvious big play is to gain control of the North through Sansa, and then use that to gain control of the Seven Kingdoms. So that seems like a solid plan to me. And it seems like he sees Arya as a threat, because Arya is obviously the Jon advocate, and his whole plan is to subvert Jon. And he sees Arya as getting closer to Sansa, which is not, he wants to be the one close to Sansa. So he's, you know, using these plans to drive them apart. So I think that makes perfect sense. Doesn't make much sense to me that Arya didn't use her faces, or was better at tracking so Littlefinger couldn't see, if she's supposed to be this skilled assassin who infiltrated the twins and killed everyone there, that she could just be so easily spotted by Littlefinger. That part of it I didn't quite buy, but other than that, I actually kind of like this storyline.
And also, what if Arya didn't happen to look at that little tiny hole in the mattress and his whole plan falls apart? I thought that was a little bit of a stretch. But I want to make this clear. I said in my review, I'm in wait and see mode here. I am not making passing judgment yet. I was 100% with you, Mark, about Littlefinger, but this episode is giving me pause. It's giving me a little doubts. And yeah, I'm sure he has some kind of general plan to, you know, control Sansa and get the North. But the Littlefinger we know should have a very specific plan that he's had for a while. And I was on board with the idea that he did until this episode. It really doesn't seem like he does. Yeah. It seems like he's just playing it by ear, just kind of going with the flow, which is very not what Littlefinger does, and it goes against what he even said in the previous episode about always, you know, seeing all the possibilities. He should have a very specific plan that's been in place for a while about how specifically he's going to take the North through Sansa. And I was all on board with the idea that he did until this episode. Now I'm starting to doubt that. Now it really feels like he's flying by the seat of his pants and just making things up as he goes along, which is contrary to the way Littlefinger has done things in the past. So I am still wait and see mode. I'll wait till the end of the season before I really judge, you know, how well Littlefinger's plans were. But this episode really gave me a lot of doubt that I didn't have before, that he doesn't really have any kind of specific plan, that he's just going with the flow and making shit up as he goes along.
I don't know. It didn't really give me much doubt because I don't know. I still think it's possible he has a specific plan, but I think it very well could be the case. But if we get to the end of the season and it's very well not to be the case, then I'll completely agree with you guys. But at the moment, I still think it's a strong possibility.
Well, I still think it's a possibility, and I said I'm waiting until the end of the season too.
Yeah.
I just have some doubts now that I didn't have prior to this episode, but I'll still wait. We'll see at the end of the season what Littlefinger's plans really were, and then we'll see. And there's also something else that they could do that I would find satisfying, but I'll let Max talk for a little bit. We'll get to do more with Sansa, so I'll get to that in a minute. But what do you think?
Yeah, Sansa too. Everything Winterfell I actually did really like. My one concern is I do kind of agree with Akton a bit. It's just like, with Littlefinger, I feel like he's playing Winterfell gossip. Like he's just playing such a small game and he's running around trying to get them to hate each other. And it's just like, it's just a short-term gossip game. And like, I just feel like he's got Robin's ear. He could utilize the Veil in some way. They're using their armies. Like, I feel like there's another move he could do. And like, maybe I'm just not seeing it properly, but like, why does he so strongly want Arya and Sansa against each other? Like, I understand the core of it. Like, you don't want them like relying on each other. He wants her to be dependent on him. I just feel like I just don't see why that would really get him what he wants. Because Sansa. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm pretty sure Dan and Dave said in the inside the episode that something about how he's trying to get Arya on the outs with Sansa because Sansa would be able to take care of. Sansa's in control of Winterfell. Maybe I'm making this up in my memory, but I thought they said something along those lines. That's
just the way I
kind
see
of
it.
his play.
Yeah, just like publicly, Arya hasn't made it known that she's in support of Jon. Like she's been a pain in Sansa's ass directly to Arya, but she hasn't done anything to contend Jon to the public of like House Glover and all these bannermen. Like Sansa's still leading, and Arya, I feel like hasn't affected that negatively. Only her talking to Sansa. So I just don't see how it's a huge threat right now.
Well, I think Littlefinger's smart enough to tell where Arya stands.
Yeah,
I think he can read her. And I think she's made it, even if she hasn't publicly spoke, I think she's made it pretty obvious that she's not okay. I mean, just all you have to do is watch her reaction to Lord Glover and all those people. She was like pissed off as all hell when they were talking about Jon. And I think that's another thing about this scene that kind of opened my eyes. And a lot of people, I've heard a lot of just criticism about Lord Glover, about how he's like, oh, Jon, you're my king. It's so bad of me to not support you. I feel so bad. Please forgive me. You're the king in the north. And then as soon as he goes, oh, he's not the king. I want Sansa to be the queen.
Yeah,
that I found just a bit crazy. Like Glover's like, he's like, we should have backed you. But it's like, don't you know what your king's doing? Like, holy shit. Like, I get the king isn't in the north, but he's doing a shit ton for you guys. But I got to say really quickly, I did love Sansa and Arya's interaction. And I loved how Arya kind of called Sansa on her stuff. I thought that was really awesome.
Yeah, I did actually like that scene too, but I disagree. I thought I don't know where Arya was coming from there. I definitely side with Sansa there. Like Arya just wants to go around chopping off everybody's heads. She does not understand how politics work.
Yeah.
I agree with Sansa there.
Yeah, I thought she was. I thought she was being a little harsh on Sansa on how she treated the lords. I mean, she did say, "Jon's the king of the north. We got to respect him." What I don't understand Arya's problem with that. Where Arya is right, however, is when she said, you're thinking about it, aren't you? You're thinking, and Sansa didn't really actually deny that. So Arya hit a nerve there. Arya was right there, but definitely. I did think she was being a little harsh on Sansa about how she was. Treating the lords. Like, what else is she going to say to them?
I think you're kind of meant to disagree with Arya. I think this scene is meant to showcase how Arya has a more sort of bloody attitude and warlike way of dealing with things, and isn't really akin to the intricacies of politics. And it was just like, oh, let's kill. Like her suggestion, oh, we just cut off their heads and they'll follow us. Now she's being like Cersei, pretty much. Like she is being like a tyrant. But it just goes to show that I think I love the scene because it shows the difference between the two systems.
Yeah.
How they handle things differently. And I think similar to the way what I said with Sansa and Jon and their interactions is I think the two of them could accomplish great things if they come together because they each have a different side that they need tempered by the other. I think they can accomplish great things, and I think Littlefinger maybe sees that and is going to purposely divide them so they'll be less powerful together.
Yeah, I like how. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. You go first, and I'll see because I'm changing the subject a little bit.
Okay, I was just gonna say I did love how they showed the differences between them, like you said, Mark. Like Arya grew up as an assassin, and I think they did a really good job because Arya has no political game at all. In that sense, I totally agreed with Sansa. But from Arya's perspective, I think she is pissed off because it's like, what the hell? Like, I know who you were before we split up. You like fancy things, and I feel like you're not respecting my brother, John. But obviously I disagree with Arya in the sense of beheading people, but I love when she mentioned, like, you can't turn it off. Like, you're thinking about John not making it back. You're fortifying alliances for yourself. So when John, is work, because I think it's totally true. Like, she cannot help but think, and it's Littlefinger's advice, think of every battle, think of everything. And it's a possibility for Sansa that she could be Queen of the North. And she's engaging with the Bannermen in that way. And I think that pisses Arya off because she hates seeing Sansa interact with them for her own benefit rather than her brothers.
Yeah, and I mean, and I do agree that Arya did have a point when she's like, you're thinking about this. I mean, she is, but I don't think she's acting on it. I didn't have any problem with the way Sansa interacted with the Northern Lords. What else is she supposed to do? Like, I just think, I thought Arya was being a little hard on her there. But she does have a good point that Sansa, she has been thinking about it. Littlefinger has been getting into her head a little bit. And
oh, absolutely.
And Arya does have a good point there. But what I was going to say before is that, because you were talking about, Arya and Sansa coming together, what I would love to see, that I would find pretty satisfying, is that if in the end, Arya and Sansa pull a long con on Littlefinger. And it would be great if they were already planning it now, but I don't think that that's going to happen. I think that they are legitimately, Arya does legitimately believe what Littlefinger is feeding her, and she is legitimately going to turn against Sansa. But what would be cool to me, and I don't know if they'll do this, probably not, but if they have a long con against Littlefinger where they're working together to trap him, and the audience doesn't find out as soon as they know. Like, the audience finds out later. We're still led to believe that they're divided, that they're working against each other, but really off screen they've come together, and it's all a part of this conniving plan to get Littlefinger, and then they get him in the end. I would find that satisfying. I kind of doubt that they're going to do this, but I would find it satisfying, especially from a Sansa perspective, for her to use Littlefinger's powers against him to cause his demise. I heard this brought up in another review where she used kind of Ramsay's own weapon against him to cause his demise. Like, she used turn the dogs on him. So to use Littlefinger's like kind of long con and his clever scheming and the whole speech that he gave her about seeing all the possibilities, like if she took that and used it against him, I think that would be a very satisfying ending. I hope they do something like that. I'm not sure if they will, but I would find a satisfying ending, a resolution to this story.
Yeah, I think they could, and I agree. I think that would be amazing if they did, and I still think it's a possibility. But I think there's other ways that it could be interesting too. So I'll just have to see.
I hope they don't just play it straight, because it's come out what that letter says. People have decoded it, and it's Rob's. It's a letter for Rob, and I personally think that that's a weak piece to use to pit them against each other. I think that's extremely weak. So if it actually works, I think I'm going to be disappointed, because I feel like that's such a weak piece to get Arya and Sansa against each other.
Well, see, I thought the same thing about it, that, Arya's really going to be upset about that, but I think it is going to work for plot convenience.
Which annoys me, which I feel like this whole season is doing.
Actually, this I don't have a problem with, because Arya doesn't have the context. She doesn't, I don't know. She knows nothing about what really happened there. And she already has these kind of negative ideas of Sansa that she's kind of stemmed from, the way she felt about Sansa when they were little girls. Like, she's still thinking of Sansa as she was when she was a little girl. Like, oh, you've always wanted nice things and all of this stuff. She kind of still holding on to this hatred. So that's the basis for it. For her to see this letter years later out of context, I can buy. I buy. I actually just, I actually don't have a problem with this. I do buy this.
I can see that perspective, but it still seems like, Arya doesn't know what Sansa went through, but she's gotta be smart enough to realize that Sansa was a hostage, and
she's a survivor too, and that's what she had to do. But yeah, I don't know. I hope that they pay it off, and I hope it doesn't become another thing that the producers went back and said, oh, there was a letter here that they wrote to Rob, and that was on the show, so we can use that. And they just kind of dragged it over. So I hope that they pay it off properly and they don't just use it because it was in the show.
Yeah. One last thing I wanted to touch on, back to what Lord Glover and the others were saying. I think that just goes to show that Jon is right in that he couldn't just bend the knee to Daenerys. That if he did, they would be like, well, fuck you, and just say, you're not our king anymore, and we'll just be independent with Sansa. And I think that just proved how tenuous his hold over the North was.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right, so I want to go ahead and move on to our spoiler section now. To make it clear, not about episode 6. We have not seen episode 6, so please no spoilers about episode 6. But spoilers in regard to the plot leaks and production leaks that came out before the season, so we know a little bit about what's going to happen in the next 2 episodes. Some very specific little bits. So if you don't want to have any of that spoiled for you, go ahead and close out of the video now. Thank you so much for joining us. But if you want to go ahead, be warned, here from this point out, there'll be spoilers, but please still no spoilers from episode 6. All right. Cool. So something specifically I wanted to talk about, but I'm kind of blanking on that at the moment. So is there anything you guys...
I have something specific I'm dying to talk about. Can I start with that? Because it goes back to something Max said earlier in the video, and I was dying to say something, but I was like, oh, we're not in the spoiler section. When you were talking about how Bran needs to see a vision of Rhaegar, I thought that's in the plot leak.
No.
He sees a vision of Rhaegar and Lyanna getting married.
I don't know a plot leak. I didn't read that plot leak. I've never heard anything of that.
Yeah, that was in the plot leak. Do you
I don't remember reading that as well.
Wait, wasn't there another thing that you thought you read that Mark and I didn't read either?
No, Mark read something that you and I.
Yeah, I'm the one who read stuff that you guys.
Yeah, no, it was Mark. No, I definitely read that somewhere. Maybe it wasn't the plot leak.
Well, let's hope so, but yeah, I didn't read anything about that.
No, I specifically read that Bran sees a vision of Rhaegar and Lyanna getting married, and also there was like some. I forget if he was a musician or somewhat well-known person who has long blonde hair, and he was cast as Game of Thrones. And people were like, oh, he's
okay.
I think that part was the actor part. I got in shit for that because I thought it was legit, and then I realized I think that was fake because the musician was actually, he sent out a couple tweets being like, hey, look at me. He was kind of fighting for this role that didn't exist because he wanted it. But I could be wrong. But
that was something different. No, there was it was on Watchers on the Wall. There actually was somebody who was cast who looked similar to Rhaegar. There was somebody different who was like, oh, look at me, I should be Rhaegar. But those are two different things, I'm pretty sure.
But the one thing
I swear to God that I read that I thought it was in the plot leak where Bran sees a vision of Lyanna.
Well, the one thing I remember from the plot leaks is that they said that Jon will be revealed his real name is Aegon. And so I thought that was done through Bran's visions.
Shit. I don't remember. The Aegon thing's funny too, because there's a lot of different stories on that. Like the plot leak said Aegon, which obviously we're like, that's fucking stupid. Like that's the name of, that's retarded. And then I said it could be Aemon, and that's what some people are saying. But like EW confirmed that it was Jaharis, so that's probably fake too. So it's hard to pinpoint what's real in this. But the plot leak has been real until now, so I don't see a reason to doubt.
Well, there were lip readers who said that in the scene of the Tower of the Joy that Lyanna Stark clearly said a J name when she was whispering to Ned Stark. And she definitely said the letter J. So that's why the Jaharis comes from. She also may have just decided on her own that his name is now John instead of Aegon, I guess. And that's where the J name can come from. But that's where people were like, oh, it's Jaharis, because she said a J name, not an A name, not Aegon, not an E.
I actually saw from several places in the plot leak, so I think it was totally legit about the Aegon thing. Like that was, to me, that was just as clear as the dragon white thing. Like,
I'm sorry, I just got to point out in the chat. I got some backup. I got Cardinal Doomsday and Zelda Young both saying that they read. I assume you're talking about the Rhaegar thing that I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
They're both saying, so I'm not making that up. Two other people have.
That's good. I'd hope to see that. I would love to see a vision with Bran in the next episode when Jon's like over the wall, or like see him in the last episode, kind of like what they did in season 6, kind of like the Tower of Joy reveal in the last episode. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if they do that.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't know if Bran's going to tell Jon this season. It would piss me off if he didn't.
Yeah, I don't think so.
It won't for me, because I've been saying all along that I could very easily see Jon not finding out till season 8, and I don't have a problem.
It just irritates me because we got earlier with Bran says, "Oh, I need to talk to Jon," and they're rushing everything else, and then to take forever to do this. Just
I don't think he will, and like I held my tongue until the spoiler part, but in the plot leak it says that Sam's gonna make it to Winterfell, right? And him and Bran are gonna figure out his identity, whatever. I swear to God, Sam's gonna arrive. He's gonna be like, "Hello," and then they're gonna talk for a bit, and Bran is gonna say like, "You've been with Jon. Jon is actually blah blah blah. He's the son of this and this." And then Sam will go, "Oh my God, Gilly, what did you say to me? You said Rhaegar? That's Jon's dad's name, right?" And then that's just how they're gonna piece it together. And then bada boom, bada bing. They have like the proof and they have the vision, and then away you go. So I that's why I got annoyed when I heard Gilly talk like that, because I know how the end will result based on the plot leak. So I got kind of frustrated.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I still think they're gonna show us, but also I would go so far, Mark, to say not only will I not be annoyed if Jon doesn't find out in episode or season 7, I won't be surprised if he doesn't find out to episode. We got 6 next year, 4, 5.
Don't say it.
I would have absolutely no problem with that. It makes sense to me that he doesn't find out.
No.
Yeah,
probably next season's gonna be nuts. Jon's gonna Jon's gonna go north of the wall.
It's just such a TV trope, such a movie trope, where two people have information that another character needs, but the other character doesn't get it, and you should have it. It just annoys me whenever it's done. It's such a TV trope. But I don't know. But maybe.
Well, as you said, for a previous TV trope, I'm just used to it. It's whatever. Like I accept it as a TV trope.
Okay, so I remember the thing I wanted to talk about with the plot leaks, and that's when I talked about earlier in the conversation with Cersei's pregnancy. We know that it's going to be a miscarriage. And that's something I couldn't mention. So we know her pregnancy is legit because it's going to be a miscarriage, and I can see why it's going to be important to the plot for that reason, for the miscarriage, because it's going to drive Cersei even more mad, and that's going to push her away from Jaime, because before, like you said, her children all died, and that's what she had nothing to live for anymore, because her children is what she lived for. And so this baby is like this new hope. So that's why I think it's kind of an important plot point in their characters, because it's a shimmer of hope that Jaime sees that Cersei could still be a good person and still have something to live for. But when that hope dies, I think Cersei's going to lose all hope again and truly go mad, and that's what's going to help push Jaime away.
And I absolutely agree with that. Yeah,
I agree with that.
I guess there's no way to know for sure, but I think even without that knowledge, I wouldn't buy that Cersei was lying. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't buy. I don't think I'd buy that. But we know that she's not lying, because we know that it's a miscarriage.
And even if I didn't know the plot leaks, I would think that she would get a miscarriage, because you have 3 children. Gold will be the crowns, gold are shrouds, and like it's prophecy, so you could say like, oh, he was brown haired, but like, I just feel like you wouldn't want her to have a kid anyway, because it could potentially conflict with that prophecy. Yeah,
either that or she would just die before she had the baby. Like
that too.
I would have thought would happen, and absolutely. And I've heard people in other reviews who don't know the plot leaks, or at least are pretending that they don't know the plot leaks, who made that very same point that that doesn't fit with the prophecy. So she can't have this child. But I think a lot of those people are assuming she'll just die before she gives birth, which I would also think would be a possibility. If I didn't know that she was going to have a miscarriage, I would probably think that was a possibility too, that she'd just die before she was able to give birth to this child.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll say is I didn't realize that, like, I knew this thing with getting the white and capturing it to make a piece of Cersei was coming, but I'm shocked it happened this soon, that they brought up this armistice this early in episode 5. I thought that would be like an episode 7 thing. So it does.
Yeah.
Well, no, because I mean, we knew that they brought up the armistice idea.
The armistice.
But we knew that they were going to come up with the idea of getting a white in episode 5.
Well, some people even surmised that they were going to go up north of the wall for some other reason. We just knew they were going north to the wall.
I wish it was another reason.
I always thought it was to capture white, so I wasn't surprised in that part of it. I was just surprised in the armistice part of it. Like that they actually went to Cersei and she came up with the scheme. Oh, I'm just going to use this. Like I thought that would be a big season 7 reveal. I'm going to use this. Yeah.
Sorry, I just geeked out from it. I just think it would be so cool. Like instead of capturing a white, like involving Bran, like I've always said I think the Night King is always connected to the weirwood trees because they're surrounded in ice, and I feel like he's always connected. That would explain him being able to see Bran and touch him and like all that shit. And like if he was able to like manipulate Bran into thinking that they had to go north for a purpose, but they ended up a trick from the Night King manipulating Bran through the weirwood. I don't know. I would do anything to avoid capturing a white. I don't know. We'll see. But like episode 7, I have no idea what really is gonna happen. Like I hope we get a surprise. Like the Sept of Baelor was a huge surprise. Episode 10 of last season was so strong, and I hope we get that this season. My one worry though is how they're gonna handle next episode. Like I'm genuinely terrified. Because like you have a lot of pieces at play. We know that they're gonna be trying to capture this white. I don't know how they're gonna show that on screen and not make it look weird and misguided. We know, like according to Hardhome, they're hordes. Like how do you capture one from thousands? And on top of that, it says that Daenerys comes and saves the day. How? She's staying in Dragonstone. Like if she just I will be so pissed if she just shows up. And how could she possibly know that? So it's like you have to draw out this huge action sequence for so long, and I just don't see how that would even work.
Max, you know exactly how she would show up. The teleporter.
Well,
I'm gonna be so mad if it works out that way. And how would she find out? Like, how is she gonna know that she's needed? How is she gonna get there? I don't
have a problem with her getting. Actually, that's the one teleporter issue I don't have is Daenerys riding Drogon, because Drogon can fly pretty damn fast. So I don't, and she knows they're going to Eastwatch, so maybe she just decides that she's gonna go. I think it's not the how she gets there that bothers me. It's the why would she do it?
Why?
And let's not leave out the gorilla in the room. The one thing that I know at least Mark and I have always been dreading, and Mark and I have been really hoping that this was wrong about the plot leak, which is the whole idea of this dragon white.
See, I'm fine with that.
The Night King riding the dragon.
I come to terms. I've accepted this is going to happen.
So for me again,
well, I mean, I accepted that it's going to happen, but this is another thing that I was like, hey, I will wait and see what it looks like on screen. It sounds really stupid, but I will see what it looks like on screen. And I'm a little fearful because the other things that I did that to, like the Gendry thing, ended up not being good. So so I'm a little bit worried, but I'm still gonna let's just wait and see. And maybe it'll be really cool. Maybe afterwards I'll be like, hey, I really like that. But
I think it's a great concept. It's just about how they do it.
I think it's a terrible concept.
Yeah, me too.
I think it's really stupid, but I'm hoping that it looks good on screen.
Yeah, I have some hope that they'll be able to pull it off.
They'll pull it off. Yeah, I hope so. I
had a lot of people who agree with you, Max, who are arguing with me and being like, "Well, it's not fan service," but to me, that's the very definition of fan service. It's like I don't know. It's just really. As soon as I heard about it, it really bothers me.
I think it's fine to me. It's just how they do it, and I hope we get I just hope we get more. I hope it's not just like an action sequence to capture a white. I hope we get somewhat of a reveal there. Like with Hardhome, we learned that Valyrian steel kills whites, and we got like this epic kind of survival battle between them. Like I hope that we get some kind of a reveal of something. I keep talking about the Rhaegal thing. If we got some kind of a connection between Jon and Rhaegal, I think it'd be unbelievable.
Actually, I was going to say, Max, I don't think that's going to happen.
Fuck, I hope so.
It wasn't Regal that. I think your theory made sense if it was Regal that John petted in this episode, but it wasn't. It was Drogon.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're going to play up this Regal John connection at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, and really the show really, really focuses on Drogon. Always has. Like Viserion, or what's this, Viserion?
It said
Viserion.
Viserion's gonna. That was in the plot leak, right? Viserion's gonna die.
Yeah, I think it was Viserion who gets turned into white.
Yeah.
Viserion and Rhaegal are kind of, they just sort of fly around. They're kind of like secondary characters. Like Drogon's the main dragon character, and the other two are just sort of side characters.
And that's and it makes it more believable to me that they'll kill Viserion off, because it's kind of like Summer and the Direwolves. They don't really care about them. They're just
but then that shoots down the whole. Three heads. I mean, not that there was a three heads prophecy, but the whole thing with the three dragon riders is gone. Yeah. Unless, there's no way the dragon can become unwhited. Like once it's dead. So,
my way to justify it would be Viserion would have been Tyrion's dragon, but they didn't establish Tyrion in any way for being a rider other than him petting it. So kill that dragon, get it over with. Rhaegal seems like the natural fit for Jon. So
I still think that they could do that in the books, but it doesn't feel like they're going there in the show.
I don't think it'll be fan service to have Jon ride a dragon.
I don't think it'll be.
I think it's a natural extension of the story to make sense. But
I just wonder where they're going to go with the books, because now I'm in this weird loop of like, it was just this episode. Like, I love this season. This episode just made me question things. Like how much information did George R. R. Martin give them? Like, I know that they know of a roadmap of how it ends, but I'm sure if they went to George R. R. Martin and said, "Hey, we're going to have them capture a white," I doubt he'd say that's a great idea. Like I don't know. Like, I feel like I just don't even. It's like they're writing fan fiction. I just feel like George R. R. Martin might have had some input. I'm just really curious to see what the books will be like versus the show.
They made it kind of clear that they're working off of bullet points. That they sat down with George after like season 4 and asked him like, "All right, where do you plan on taking each character?" And he's like, "Well, I'm going to do this with this character and this with that character." So basically bullet points, and they're working off of that. And so everything else is just making up.
And that is what they're working off of. Yeah. And I have to say, all the complaints that people have been saying that the writing has deteriorated since they left the book material, I absolutely agree with. I mean, going back to last season, a lot of the writing, with the whole thing with Arya, was of lesser quality. It's just kind of how do you respond to that? Do you say, "Oh, well, the show is horrible, it's not the books, I'm not watching it," or "I'm going to watch it and just complain about it the whole time, it's terrible"? Or do you say, like, my reaction thus far, hopefully this doesn't change by the end, but my reaction so far is, who cares if the writing has gone down? It's still the best show on television. It still has the best battle sequences you will ever see on TV, has amazing characters, amazing character interactions, amazing acting, amazing directing, amazing makeup, CGI, everything. Still one of the best shows on TV. Yeah, but absolutely. You can't deny that the writing has decreased in quality since they left the books.
I would say this: in places the writing has decreased, like the whole Dorne fiasco, the Arya thing, and this rushed episode of Rush Fellowship and getting the white. But in other places, I think it's actually improved from earlier seasons. Like
I think there are places where the bastards and as far as it's improved, but there are still places where the writing is good, but overall, the general quality of the writing, like they never would have done anything as horrible as this scene with the meeting at Daenerys. They never would have done anything as horrible as what they did with Arya or Dorne before, when they're working strictly off of George R. R. Martin material. They never would have done anything that bad. That's not to say that all the writing is bad, because they're still doing good writing. I'm just saying overall, if you take it as a big picture, the quality.
But the thing is like I actually prefer like season 6 and possibly season 7 to like a season 3, even though season 3 was building directly off the books. They were kind of just wankering and paying too much attention. And in season 1, I think they were following the books too closely and weren't sure how to run their own show. So in some ways, I actually think the writing has improved since earlier seasons, but in other ways not. So I see it as a mixed bag.
I just hope they know, like, as producers of the show, they know exactly what's going to happen the next season while they were writing this season. Like, they have a clear roadmap and they have established that, because I hope we don't get to the point where, like, we have 6 episodes left and I hope every episode isn't just reveal. Like, I feel like they could have shared it and put some in here, like, and I just don't want it to be like really intense and throwing everything at once and the whole kitchen sink at it in 6 episodes, rather than like spreading it out and, you know, just making it, I don't know, I feel like it would be bad rushed that way.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm about ready to end this discussion here. If you guys, unless you have anything else to say,
there was something else I wanted to say, but I'm kind of. Oh, there is. I do want to talk about something else.
Okay, sure.
Because every review, every podcast that I've listened to is people speculating about who's going to die amongst this Magnificent Seven or Fellowship, and I believe the plot league has definitely confirmed 2 deaths, right? Just Barrick and.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, just Thoros.
I never read Barrick.
I never read any Barrick either.
No, absolutely, definitely, it was both of them. I mean, this I have no doubt of. You guys had me doubting about the Rhaegar thing, but 100%, the very first plot leak I ever read, it was both of them. But
I read one, and mine just said Thoros.
Yeah, I still have strong doubts about this because I never read anything about Barrick.
Well, you guys will see, because I'm 100% certain that the very first time I ever read the plot leak, it definitely said both.
Well, I mean, that being said, I think Barrick's going to die, but I just don't.
Yeah, but it's interesting. I'm listening to all these people who don't know the plot leaks, and every single person is like, Thoros, Samir, Barrick, Dondarrion 1 and 2 dead. I mean, they're the most likely to die.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you guys, like, besides those 2, do you think anyone else is going to die? Because in my predictions, my who's going to die predictions, I also predicted Tormund and Gendry, and I know that will piss a lot of people off if they brought Gendry back and just killed him. But 3 words actually: Osha and Rickon.
Yeah, I don't want that again. I know. I don't want it again.
Yeah.
And you don't. And Gendry is not in the plot leak at the Dragon Pit scene, so he's dead. And
on top of that, in the preview, you see the Hound holding his hammer.
Oh, really? I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
Well, all right, and I covered this in the last video I did of the predictions when I uploaded earlier.
Oh, sorry, yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch that yet.
That's all good. But it's basically what I said. Like Tormund, I said definitely Barrick, definitely Thoros, maybe Tormund. That's as far as I'll go. And I'll say, like, I'm not saying they won't kill off Gendry and Jorah. They could possibly, because we haven't seen them at the Dragon Pits. But I was saying if they do, it's going to piss me off beyond belief. I'll be very upset with them because that would render both their storylines, and especially how rushed their introduction here. If they were just to be killed off, that would render both, especially Jorah's storyline, his entire season storyline, a waste of fucking time. So they better not kill off Jorah and Gendry is what I'm saying. Not that they won't, but they better not. So I'm sticking with Barrick, Thoros, and possibly Tormund, although I still think Tormund needs to be around to be the representation of the wildlings, but if the wildlings aren't really relevant for the rest of the show, then maybe we don't need a representation. So possibly him as well.
That is my line of thinking when Tormund's dying. Like the wildlings won't be relevant anymore. So
I would say, sorry, go ahead.
I think that we see in the preview that there's a bunch of other wildlings that come out. I think they're going to kind of act as if this is the extinction of the wildlings, even though there could be thousands of them everywhere, and they're just going to kind of not be on the show anymore. So that's why I think they use Tormund, because
they're just going to kill every character that we don't know.
Yeah,
that's with them pretty much.
You think?
There's going to be a whole lot of red shirts there.
Definitely.
All the Magnificent Seven, the Avengers of Game of Thrones, they're all going to be fine. I feel like Thoros and Barrick, those make the most sense. Gendry, like, I get the whole Rickon thing, but like Gendry, And they didn't even establish him to be that important. Like he's a guy. Like they want him to hide his name. He's a fighter, and that's it. They didn't establish him.
Reintroducing him much worse, though.
I totally get it. That's why. Like I pray that they don't kill him. I hope that they don't. I have faith in them that they won't kill him, but it wouldn't catch me by surprise. Tormund, I love Tormund. I actually think Tormund will end up being fine. Just because, like, I get it, the wildlings could be irrelevant going forward, but I still feel like, I don't know, I guess could be a disagreement. I think he still needs to be the face of the wildlings because I think they still may be important. But yeah, Tormund is a flip of the coin. So is Gendry, but the rest are surviving. Like Jorah, you're not going to have that whole story with Jorah just to kill him off. So yeah, I agree with you guys.
Cool. All right, so I want to go ahead and wrap things up. Thank you so much, guys, for joining. Thanks, everyone in the chat who stuck through us this whole time. So me and Apkin will be back next couple of weeks, I believe. We'll be on your channel, Apkin.
The final 2 episodes will be on, the final 2 discussions will be on my channel.
Yeah. And so next week we'll be doing, we're thinking of doing it Wednesday night at 2 for the final 2 weeks as well. And next week we'll be joined by Don Willie and Don the Kraken Witt. So I'll have 2 guests. So that will be a lot of fun. And the following week, as confirmed, we'll be joined by Phil the Issues Guy. It's always a blast. These talks. It'd be great to get into the finale. And Max, I might be appearing on your channel a couple of times later in the week as well.
Yes, get some live chats going. I never really got into the live chats on my channel until Mark introduced me to it, and then I've started to do it, and I think it'd be great to have you on my channel do some chats. You as well, Acton. I think it'd be great to have some discussions going for Game of Thrones as the season wraps up.
Cool, great. So yeah, just final words on your channel, where you can find them, where they can find you, and what you're up to on your channel, Max.
Well, you can find me here. That's why that's there. Buzztox. Yeah, pretty much right now I'm just breaking down the episodes, which I hope, I feel kind of bad right now. I hope it gets better in the next episode, but we will see. And I'm always talking Game of Thrones. But yeah, that's it. That's me. Buzztox.
Cool.
Oh, and thank you so much, Mark. By the way, sorry, I forgot to say thank you. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you so much, Acton.
Yeah, no
God
worries.
damn it, my manners. It was a blast talking Game of Thrones with you guys, and I love all you guys in the chat. Thank you for being in the chat and your support. There we go.
All right, thanks for coming.
Yeah, and you guys know where to find me, Akton Tamko's channel. I'm breaking down every episode every week. I also will do at least 1 or 2 more prediction update reviews. Where I talk about how I did on my predictions, which I'm doing a lot worse the last couple episodes than I did in the first couple episodes. So, so please subscribe, check out my channel, and we'll see you next week on my channel when we do this discussion.
Cool. Yes, great. Thank you everyone for joining, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.